The suffering in Gaza has been weighing heavily on Muslims around the world celebrating Eid al-Adha. Palestinians are marking yet another somber holiday in the Gaza Strip as the war rages on. We're breaking down some of the latest developments today as Israel provides more details on its tactical pause in the south in hopes of getting more aid to civilians who are in desperate need. Palestinians in Gaza held Eid al-Adha prayer Sunday among ruins. People sat on prayer mats that they placed among the rubble of surrounding destroyed buildings, trying to cling to a sense of hope. The government media office in Gaza has said that Israel prevented the entry of sacrificial animals into the enclave from all crossings, putting a stop to performing the sacrificial rituals that are part of Eid al-Adha. Regardless, Palestinians are trying to do their best to bring happiness to young children as many celebrated the holiday without their parents. UNICEF's global spokesperson saying the suffering of children and civilians is only getting more dire.
In coming back to Gaza now and seeing, of course, that as hard as it is for viewers to understand how much worse this has got, it's critical we do. This cannot be normalised. There is nothing normal about 2 days ago, yesterday, 3 days ago, me walking across children with burns, with partial limbs lying on hospital floors.
Meanwhile, the Israeli army announced a local tactical pause of military activity along a specific route from 8 a.m. until 7 p.m. every day until further notice. It's supposed to allow for more aid into Gaza from the Kerem Shalom crossing. In a nearby lot on the Israeli side of the border today, dozens of crates holding aid, mostly food items like onions, canned mushrooms, rice, and bananas, were waiting to be put on trucks for a transfer on the border to international organizations. Israel putting the blame for the delay on the United Nations.
Not having sufficient amount of trucks, not having enough truck drivers, not working enough hours a day, not having enough storage. These are all different things that the UN can and should be improving. We've only seen around 25 additional trucks make their way into the Gaza Strip since the beginning of the war, and there is a serious need for additional number of trucks, and we've worked together with the UN to increase that. But unfortunately, the UN isn't doing enough right now.
Despite the tactical pause for aid deliveries, Israel did emphasize that its soldiers would continue to fight in the southern part of the enclave, including in Rafah, where more than 1 million displaced Palestinians are sheltering.
We share the same target, that the people of Gaza will get the food, and not Hamas. Hamas is looting. But Hamas is taking the food.
It is the law and order issue, because obviously law enforcement has been targeted by Israeli military, and so that there is no law enforcement within Gaza. So are you going to escort these trucks? The military will escort them?
Well, this is a war zone, and we need to act inside a war zone and to find inside the complexity the way that finds solutions.
In a move that has raised more questions, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu disbanded his war cabinet today. It effectively consolidates his influence over the Israel-Hamas war. The Prime Minister informed cabinet that he will hold sensitive consultations in a smaller forum dubbed the Kitchen Cabinet. But it's adding to worries that this might diminish the odds of a ceasefire.
It doesn't change our fundamental assessment of the situation. We'll continue to have the very direct and candid conversations with members of the Israeli government as we have for some time.
The war in Gaza erupted when Hamas militants stormed southern Israel on October 7th, killing around 1,200 people and taking more than 250 hostages. Israel has responded with a military assault on the Gaza Strip that has killed more than 37,000 Palestinians. Joining us now from Cairo is Susanne Mikhail, the Regional Director of the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women for the Arab States. Suzanne, in the aftermath of all of these latest attacks in Gaza, how are women and children coping?
So if we look at the background of what's happening today, Nicole, we already know that more than 35,000 people have been killed in Gaza. UN Women's estimates shows that around 10,000 women have been killed so far. But it's when we dig deeper into those demographics that the picture becomes even more disturbing. Because only in the past month, since 7 of October, 6,000 mothers have been killed, and that have left around 19,000 children orphaned. So that in itself gives us the situation of where we are today.
Those are staggering numbers, Susanne. Now, can you describe for us what women in Gaza have been going through as they care for their families while also managing their own physical and mental health?
Sure. And it's not only women, Nicole, it's actually young girls and the entire life cycle of a woman. So as a young child, as I alluded to earlier, the chance is now great that you have actually lost the very essence of your security, i.e. your parents, in this case your mother or your father. Then entering into teenage or puberty, of course, there is tremendous risks with not having the minimum package for hygiene and survival and medical survival. And of course, a couple of years later, you might become pregnant. And here again, the situation is quite serious as there are hardly any functioning hospitals on the ground. And we know, of course, also through UN Women estimates that more than 80% of pregnant women are today going through urinary infections, and that's actually quite serious. Then, of course, when you enter the phase of breastfeeding and you need water, you need food to keep you healthy, again, you're in a situation where you simply cannot feed your own newborn. 80% of pregnant women today in Gaza are actually going through anemia. They're anemic at this point of time. So it's an entire life cycle. And of course, then when you have slightly older children, your daily struggle is to keep them protected, i.e. saving their lives, but also equally feeding them. And as you know very well, there is hardly any humanitarian assistance entering into Gaza. And so this task is becoming more and more difficult, if not impossible.
It's what we in the West just take for granted. And, you know, we see the horrific footage day after day, but do you have any stories of women on the ground? I mean, what does a typical day look like for them?
Only a couple of weeks ago, I was myself told about the story of a woman who simply witnessed the killing of her husband and her son at a 5-meter range. And these stories are actually recurrent. So they're on a daily basis, and they reach us increasingly in the past couple of months. And they've reached us increasingly in the past couple of months. Another story is a woman who lost her husband. And this is, of course, a phenomenon now also in Gaza because of the high levels and high proportions of mortality amongst men. So you have a very large number of female-headed households, i.e. widows. And this is a story about a woman with 5 children, desperate to feed her children. She didn't want to leave them alone in their apartment, but she had to simply for a desperate search of food. And in a couple of hours where she was out, when she returned back to her home, it was demolished with all of the 5 children killed. So these are the stories that are repeated, again, on a daily basis. So what is mostly needed now is one single development, and that would be towards ceasefire. And with that, we need, of course, the release of all hostages. And with that, we also need humanitarian access to ensure a regular flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza. But in the long run, only a diplomatic path towards a durable solution and a 2-state solution will do. So that's where we are today.
You know, it's hard to even imagine what these families and what these women are going through. Susanne, thank you so much for being here with us tonight on Trending Now.
Thank you so much, Nicole.